Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.
Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. With me today is Dan Mondello, co-founder and CEO of Rank Really High. Thank you very much for joining me today, Dan.
Thanks for having me, David. Great to be here.
Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to the newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. Dan, I always like to start with the origin story, right? So what was it that brought you to cannabis?
A lot of interesting decisions. But mostly I was running two other highly successful digital advertising businesses out in Minneapolis. And I remember very vividly watching my friends back home in Massachusetts as they waited in line on Facebook Live to buy legal cannabis in Massachusetts. I remember thinking to myself, holy smokes, this is so cool. I can't wait to go home for Christmas break. And then I took a look at some of the websites of these dispensary businesses. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is all wrong. And I registered the domain Rank Really High the day that rec sales went online in Massachusetts, which I believe was November 20th, 2018, if I'm not mistaken.
So was part of the problem that, the thought that cannabis will sell itself?
I think in the early days that might have been true in Massachusetts. There was only a handful of dispos that opened, and there was no shortage of customers anxious to buy product from them. But, as competition increased, licenses were issued, the challenges became very apparent very, very quickly. And, one of the things I saw very early in, before I even got into the industry, like 3 years sitting on the bench, I saw this, was that dispensaries were using iframe technology to sell products. And my thought process has and always will be, if iframes and subdomains and reverse proxy solutions are good solutions for e-commerce, why does no other industry use them?
Was it just because that was the only real turnkey solution out there for cannabis operators that aren't necessarily web developers?
Yeah, that's most likely it. I know at the time Shopify was hard no on anything related to CBD, even in those early days, and pretty sure WooCommerce had a similar policy or policies about it. There weren't a lot of options. No one wanted to just roll up their sleeves, crack their knuckles, and go all in on a native web solution. So I think the way it was addressed initially by some of the big players that started was to have the simplest solution possible, which is the iframe. I don't think it was a bad solution. It's just not a solution that's made to live out the entireness of competitive business and retail.
So from the day that you registered the URL through today, what is the journey for Rank Really High been like?
Oh, it's been anything but a straight line. Originally, we thought to ourselves, hey, we have this great playbook that we developed in the automotive industry. We've used it in the home services industry. We'll just bring this into cannabis and we'll be great. Boy, was I wrong. Did not understand that the reason why we didn't see any dispensaries advertising on Google was because Google doesn't allow advertising for dispensaries on Google. Didn't realize that for Facebook or Instagram right away. We kind of just threw caution to the wind and dove right in and didn't realize the pool was pretty shallow at the beginning. So it's been, Rank Really High's history, Rank Really High's culture is that of constant change and constant adaptation.
So once you realized that the playbook wouldn't work, where'd you start?
I've never been someone who takes no for an answer. So when we started hitting barriers of Google, we just kept trying harder, and we reached out to resources we had developed over the course of mine and my partner's careers. We asked a lot of questions. We hired a lawyer. We got really good at having ChatGPT analyze and interpret things for us, and we literally just kept looking for every gray area of it imaginable. The idea of okay, so Google doesn't allow it, let's just not do it, was never a thought in our heads, nor was the idea of just taking status quo as an answer going to be acceptable for us. So we just kept trying, and eventually we found a format and a formula that we could easily reproduce and use and rinse, repeat. And we've been able to do a lot of advertising now in cannabis. And it seems like over the last couple months and years that a lot of these advertising platforms have become a lot more lax on their policies, enforcement, even if they haven't changed the policy on their websites.
So what does the successful formula look like now?
For Rank Really High?
For Rank Really High or for advertising that works for cannabis operators?
I think it's take no prisoners. It always has been. It's always been take no prisoners for Rank Really High. I think it also needs to be that way for every single legitimate cannabis operator. If you want to win, you have to be willing to race. And if you aren't willing to race, you're not going to win. And, one of the formulas that's always worked really well for Rank Really High is not worry about competition. You don't win a lot of races looking in the rearview mirror. So we've taken them off of the vehicle that is Rank Really High, and we just keep looking forward and trying to anticipate where the market is going, where the technology will take us, experimenting early with things like AI and different advertising formats. We just try to pride ourselves on being leading edge for every single available opportunity that cannabis brings to the table.
So how is website development and digital marketing different in cannabis versus you said you worked in automotive, you changed the formula. What are some of the things that you're doing differently that are working now?
We are doing as much the exact same from automotive as we possibly can in cannabis. Yeah, let me tell you a little bit about what web development looks like pretty much in every other industry except this one. That has retail products, I should specify that. In automotive, every single website out there, whether it's for a small mom and pop's used car dealership or Gallup and Ford, the number one Ford dealer in the world, they have a website that has a page for every single vehicle in stock, in inventory, new and used. They have a page for every single brand that they carry that is dynamically populated by their inventory. As things come in and out of inventory, the website changes to adapt to that. In cannabis, it's a lot different. It's not just one company that handles your digital presence. You hire typically an agency to do your marketing. You hire a web developer to build your website. Then you hire a menu company to build your menu. In the industries I'm familiar with, automotive most specifically, that is the same. That is one and the same person with one and the same goals, with one of the same objectives. And that's really the first thing we wanted to do here was build a comprehensive web platform that could do e-commerce integrated directly into the website. So it wasn't just a collection of disjointed mechanisms that were being passed off as a solution to marketing.
So when you first launched joint e-commerce, what was the initial response?
We did it very quietly to begin with. We want to make sure we got it right. We've seen a lot of companies in this space launch things haphazardly and have it bite them in the butt. We weren't willing to do that. So we spent a long time and we're calling it rank e-commerce now. We took a very long time to actually understand and analyze the market to figure out where we could be better, where opportunities existed. So we actually started rolling this out in October of last year, but actually made the announcement last month in July. It's because we wanted to take the time to perfect the solution, train our team on how to use it, because that's like a really good idea, and then connect with every single one of the major POS companies out there so that we weren't boxing anyone in. One of the other things we took from our automotive playbook was the fact that you can switch portions of your automotive digital marketing solution without undoing the entire thing. You can change your POS or DMS, as we call it in the automotive space, and still keep the same dealer.com website. We wanted to have that exact same flexibility and really optionality as the automotive industry has provided.
What is the top level description of rank e-commerce?
Oh, wow. Okay. So rank e-commerce is the hub for all online retail marketing activities for dispensaries. That's just a very big way of saying it does a lot of things. People mostly think about Rank Really High, David, as a web developer working with Jane and Dutchie. And we are so much more than that. We're now an integrated software platform that connects directly to POS systems. We're an integrator with Moody Day, which I believe we're going to talk about later on in this session. We are developing and are about to launch an AI budtender that uses natural language processing to actually respond to customer queries. And we're about to be even deeper in the advertising game, allowing brands to directly advertise on Rank Really High websites that carry their products. So we are trying to basically follow not what the automotive industry has been doing, but actually what traditional retail has been doing. Our playbook comes directly out of the hands of the executives of Target, Best Buy, Home Depot, Walmart, the ones that have been in this space for a while, who have some of their own products that are somewhat vertically integrated, but also sell other people's products as well. What are they doing that's so dramatically different from cannabis? How are they making money? And how can we bring those same core concepts and strategies into cannabis in a way that is compliant and productive? And that's really what gets us out of bed in the morning.
So do you want to be the Amazon of cannabis?
Not quite the Amazon of cannabis. I still want the operator to be fully in control of their marketing, but I want to provision them with tools that allows them to operate as the cannabis or the Amazon of cannabis. I got those reversed. But no, we don't want to be a marketplace. We don't want to do any of those things. We want to empower operators to be individuals that are very successful with our technology.
With any technology in cannabis, be it on the equipment side or the digital side, training is crucial. I mean, is it difficult to train up operators on your technology, or is it pretty straightforward?
The technology is, I like to say, is pretty straightforward. We made it obvious and we designed it to feel familiar and be very intuitive. I think training in general is very much lapsing in cannabis. In the automotive space, there is no shortage of great consultants, digital marketers. We even have conferences dedicated just to the digital marketing and advertising aspects of running a dealership. That's missing in this industry. You've got the MJ BizCons where you're talking to people who build lights and do hydroponics and pre-roll packaging, to people who do digital marketing. It's a spackling of everything. It's not focused. It's very distracting. So I think as a whole, there's a huge opportunity in cannabis to educate. And that is one of the things we're trying to do. We're not trying to be a digital marketing agency on the behalf of a dispensary. We're trying to be the technology and the trainer who teaches people at the dispensary how to use marketing effectively. The way I kind of think of it is, right now we're kind of operating as the artist, the canvas, the easel, and the paint, as well as the artist itself. What we're trying to do is just be the paint and the easel and the canvas and teach artists how to paint. That's really our long-term vision.
So if you had the ear of every cannabis operator in the U.S. and you had to tell them one thing about digital marketing, what would it be?
Hire a marketing manager. It is amazing, David, how few operations out there have someone who actually is in control of their marketing, someone whose best interests are served when the dispensary is winning. You're never going to find that in me or an agency or any vendor. No one's ever going to work as hard for your business as someone whose paycheck relies on it. So I think that's the first thing that a lot of dispensaries need to hear is you need to have at least one person, preferably more if your budget allows, who is in charge of how your brand is perceived, how it's advertised, how it's marketed, and what tools are being used and compiled to accomplish those feats. Right now, I think that's a huge missing opportunity.
Is that opportunity missing because, marketing and advertising in cannabis is like generally understood, or people maybe falsely believe that it's kind of all illegal?
That's a really great question. I think it's a little bit of both, right? I think there's still dispensaries holding on to the idea that I'm just going to have a store on a block with products and people are just going to show up. It's like the whole field of dreams mentality. If I build it, they will come. That is simply not the case. You are going to be in a street fight with the guy across the street who carries the same exact products that you at very similar prices. So it's a very similar store aesthetic. How do you win that fight? That's the thing that we're studying and trying to figure out how to educate our operators on. But, I think part of it's just assuming the customer will just show up. I think part of it is also not giving your competitor enough credit for how hard they've worked as well to open their business and achieve their license. And I also think it's budgetary. I just don't think I know that a lot of these operators don't have it in the budget to hire a dedicated digital marketer. So a lot of times we're talking to a budtender or an inventory implementation specialist when we really should be talking to someone and educating someone who has a little bit more than just a base understanding of the core concepts of marketing. That said, we will take anyone, we will teach them as much as we know.
Is it this understanding that, the mom and pop shop in particular will grow and sustain itself with word of mouth? And so that way, in their minds, they make it seem like advertising is superfluous?
I'm going to use an anecdote to answer that question. I remember in the early days of Rank Really High, An operator that we still work with to this day put a post on LinkedIn expressing he was having challenges and troubles. And I went and met with that operator, and he said, hey, if all I have to do is stay in business for 3 years, and then an MSO is going to come scoop me in, and I'm on easy street. And I remember just thinking to myself, never wanting to disturb an entrepreneur's, goals or ideas. I just thought to myself, gosh, if you knew how hard it was to stay in business as a startup for 3 years, I think you might rethink that strategy. And then you put the lens of it's cannabis, the most regulated industry in existence, on top of that, and it's troubling. I think that in many states, the state sets the wrong precedent about how hard or easy it is to run a business. In many states, they start with social equity licenses, which I agree with, but I don't think they are setting the right precedent, which is this is a hard business. This is a hard industry. Your competition is not going to be gentle with you. I think if we went into social equity with a more honest lens and a more honest mouthpiece of what we're doing here, I think we'd see a lot more success in the industry. I also think there needs to be some level of license limiting, because there is a point of no return. There is a meniscus in every industry, including this one.
No, I mean, there are some companies that will only do business in limited license states.
I would call those businesses kind of smart. I mean, I think limiting the scope of regulatory red tape you need to deal with, I think that understanding better a single market before expelling yourself into other markets makes a lot of sense to me. I look at Ohio, and Ohio has some of the strangest cannabis regulations I've ever seen from a digital marketing perspective. My understanding is that if you're an MSO that operates in states outside of Ohio as well as Ohio, whenever someone's shopping in Ohio on your website, it must be devoid of any language indicating that you have operations in other states to basically deter any cross interstate commerce. It's wacky what some of these regulations state, and I think that keeping it more narrow focus is a benefit, honestly.
How would you describe or define advanced e-commerce, and what kind of impact could advanced e-commerce have on cannabis retailers?
Well, I think I'm gonna cut off my nose to spite my face here a little bit. In the automotive industry, there's not a lot of difference between how your inventory is portrayed on one dealership platform for marketing versus another. Right now, we are seeing this growth phase in cannabis because we're taking an industry that's been reliant on iframes that have very limited SEO and injecting them with better SEO. It's not going to last forever, because eventually websites like the ones that rank really high builds will be the status quo, not the exception. And that's another reason why I fall back on my automotive roots, because I know what that looks like. When all things are equal, I still know how to stand out. And I really think that the growth and the opportunity for having a quote unquote SEO menu or native menu exists only for the next 6 months to maybe 18 months. After that, every website looks like a website that Rank Really High built, whether we built it or not. And then you have to come up with a new idea of how you're going to grow your business. That said, advanced e-commerce, it is having a native menu. It's having the ability and the flexibility to take inventory from one spot and put it anywhere on the website in the interest of promoting it. I think that that's a big difference between what some companies are doing with SEO menus and what we try to do, which is make the e-commerce available all over the website, including the homepage and blogs, which are typically areas of a dispensary website that are poorly used but highly trafficked, if that makes sense.
So some of these areas of the website, like a blog that is a little bit more SEO friendly, you're talking about making sure that they have their marketplace on those same pages.
That's correct. What we've found in our research, we've put a lot of initiatives in place to make multiple entry points through SEO into our websites. Despite all that, we still see roughly 39% of first-time traffic coming in through the homepage. So the thing I would say to dispensaries is, take a look at your homepage. What are you saying on it? You don't go to Walmart.com's homepage to learn about the founder, Sam Walton. You do that on Wikipedia or maybe an About Us page. You don't talk about all the charities you're involved in or every award you've won on a store page, because no one cares. They're not that they don't care, not that it's not important, but your customers are there to shop, not to educate themselves on all the great things you've done in your life. And I think anything that stands between a customer and a purchase is a bad thing to have on an e-commerce focused website. So what we really try to do is do what Target has been doing for the last 20 years, which is decorate the homepage in a way that sells more product, promote brands that are selling, promote brands that you'd like to sell more of, and offer advertising opportunities throughout. That literally is the playbook from big retail that they've been running for 20 years. I'm not sure why anyone would look at any other playbook but that one for e-commerce.
How can cannabis operators use analytics, big data to change things on their website to improve things?
They say they do. It's amazing how many large MSOs, mom and pops, dispensaries we've spoken to that do not have Google Analytics set up at all. Many do not set up correctly, tracking e-commerce conversions. And even when those two things actually do exist, there's rarely a person at the dispensary who's charged with reading and interpreting that data in order for the C-suite and executive team to make actionable change in their business. So yeah, we talk a lot about data ownership, data integrity. We don't do a lot with it in practice, in my opinion.
So you stress the importance of making that homepage, basically a marketplace. But is there still importance? Would you still put a bit of importance on content creation and regularly updating blogs and other, educational materials on a website to maybe bring in new customers?
I have a love-hate relationship with blogs. Let me explain that. It really depends upon what the focus of the content is. There have been times where Rank Really High has taken over a website that was very blog-focused and traffic came down, which obviously is very eye-opening, and we're very concerned about it. But at the same time that traffic has come down, we're also noticing that sales has come up dramatically. So what happened? When you're ranking content all nationally and your customer base is local, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Me being in Massachusetts and ranking for cannabis-related retail stuff in California makes no sense, because at best, I bring the customer from California onto my website and delight them with great content, only to disappoint them with the fact that I'm two time zones away from them and they can't easily get to me. I don't see that as a productive use of content development. Now, that said, if there's a local brand that you're going to work with, or you're going to have a pop-up in your store, if there's something that's locally interesting to a greater cannabis audience, yeah, I'm all for blogs. I just rarely see that those are the focuses of blogs. Most times I see that blogs are being written cannabis sleep products, which is a great topic, but only when it's localized. I don't need eyeballs from California to look at my dispensary in Massachusetts. I need people in Massachusetts to look at my website for my retail store in Massachusetts. I think that's really what the disconnect is. People hear traffic and assume money. I assume money when the traffic is the right traffic.
Could you do a better job, though, of more carefully targeting that content? So how people in Massachusetts are using cannabis to improve sleep?
Oh yeah, that's the exact. If I was writing a blog, I think that's the exact title I would use. Or I'd even further localize it. People in Boston pick these 10 sleep gummies as their favorites. I mean, that is a great blog. Luckily, Rank Really High kind of straddles this idea that we're not an agency, we're a technology provider. So we don't write blogs, but we always are coaching on great topic development and how a dispensary can use blog content to further their sales efforts.
You had mentioned that you're using ChatGPT. How are you using that in your day-to-day?
I use Chat. I mean, listen, I was very against ChatGPT because I felt like it's the end of the world just happening slowly. I mean that. I use it to become more efficient. What used to be a day where I could write maybe 5 or 6 good emails, or maybe 1 or 2 great pieces of content, has become a day where I can respond to 20 emails of great content and maybe write 5 or 6 pieces of decent content to publish. It's a matter of just becoming more efficiency, knowing how to use your prompts correctly. That's how I personally use it in business. Now, Rank Really High as a corporation, we've been experimenting with AI for about a year now to build an AI budtender, because we saw a huge need and a lapse in the current AI that was available to dispensaries. It felt more like a decision tree than an actual conversational experience. So we are about to release a product that actually does use ChatGPT-4 that's been fully trained to avoid medical and legal advice, but will answer pretty much anything else about cannabis you can think of, as well as make product recommendations live and give you information about the store and any specials or promotions that they're running at the time. We look at it more as a AI cannabis nerd salesperson than a budtender.
Okay, so the AI cannabis nerd salesperson, is that tied directly to your e-commerce platform so that way it also updates dynamically?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the difference. I mean, a lot of the stuff that's out there today passing itself off as AI is scraping your website. Maybe it doesn't have a direct integration with your POS. That's essential. If you're going to have a product make recommendations on behalf of your business, that business and that product need to be in direct correlation and alignment. So yeah, that was the first thing we wanted to make sure was done with this product.
So how have you fixed it? So where these retailers now have dynamically updating information, what did you all have to tie together in order to make that work correctly rather than, potentially giving customers bad info?
I wish I could say that ranked really high, stood on the shoulders of geniuses and solved all the bad info that's in cannabis. We didn't. We just found more of it when we started looking for it. It's a hard question to answer, but I'll do my best. Most of the data that's in POS systems is bad. Most of it is inaccurate. Most of it is entered by your lowest paid employees at your dispensary. It's the same thing in the automotive industry as well. We used to have the lowest paid people at the dealership. We used to call them the BDC, Business Development Center. They would be the ones responsible for bringing in customers who came in off of an internet query into the showroom. And GMs would always sit there and scratch their heads. Why are we not getting more people in the showroom? We have great inventory. We have great this. We have great that. Yeah, but the people that you're asking to bring the customers in are the least experienced, least trained, and lowest paid in your business. Why wouldn't that be successful? It sounds like a recipe for success. It's kind of the same thing in this industry where the people who have the important job of making sure the inventory is merchandised, well documented, well represented, and persuasive are not being taught how to do those things to the best of their ability.
So how do you fix it?
You start rethinking how you value the positions in your business, and you have to realize that it's funny. Cars.com, when I was a car dealer, Cars.com or Auto Trader would be in my office all the time saying, Dan, you'd sell more cars on Auto Trader and Cars.com if you had better pictures of your inventory, if you wrote better product descriptions. And they were right. They were 100% correct. Better quality information does result in higher level conversions. The problem is I didn't want to sell more cars on Cars.com or Auto Trader. I wanted to sell them on CoreCars.com, which is our dealership website. But their point wasn't lost. You fix that problem, David, through training, through commitment, through finding marketing partners who actually want you to succeed and don't just say that. They actually prove it to you by showing you and doing it with you. You do it by leveraging AI so you can write better product descriptions at scale. And you do it by getting your customer more involved and engaged in the content process, because ultimately many of these operators are vertically integrated. Isn't it in their best interest to have the best product description, to have the best picture of their product, to have the best cannabinoid profile, to have the best terpene profile, and have the best indication of what effects I can feel as a customer? It's really a matter of just committing to quality, I think.
Is there any low-hanging fruit when it comes to improving SEO and digital marketing, or is it a complete process that once you start down that path, like it never ends?
There's a couple of low-hanging fruit right now. So everyone's now realized, we got to have an SEO menu. But the ones who actually get one and do all the things we just talked about, like entering great product information, are the ones that will see the best gains from that investment. There's also a huge benefit in people recognizing that because we're using iframes by and large, and because customers don't know the brands and there's new brands popping up all over the place, that most searches that lead to cannabis purchases aren't Cresco Labs products near me or Rhythm pre-rolls or dog walkers. Most of the searches that we see, and rank really high, we have about 400 dispensaries working with us, don't start with that. They start with dispensary near me, dispensary near a zip code, dispensary near a town. And we've really tried to attach ourselves to that so that we are not a one-trick pony. So yeah, there's a lot of near me opportunities for sure, because a lot of dispensaries, again, don't have a marketing person who's not instructing an agency or their team to build out landing page content. So that's a huge opportunity. I think that's probably one of the biggest ones as well.
Okay. Does it go back to the point that you brought up earlier about hiring a marketing manager just to make sure that these cannabis retailers and operators improve SEO, improve digital marketing, start advertising without breaking local laws?
Can you rephrase the first part of that? Sorry, David.
Oh, no worries. So I was wondering if this goes back to your original point about having a marketing manager. How do cannabis operators and retailers go about improving SEO, digital marketing, and starting advertising, creating campaigns without, making sure that they're not breaking local laws?
Yeah, that's a great point. How do you do that? It's a moving target, to be honest with you. So even in Massachusetts, we're ranked really high where we try to do things at scale. To answer your question, I think it still comes back to the marketing manager, but also knowing that there's an additional skill set we're talking about now. Now we're not just talking about SEO knowledge and conversion rate and analytics knowledge. Now we're talking about compliance knowledge as well. You either need one person who's able to wrap their mind around all of that and know that it's always changing, which is magnified and amplified when you're in multiple states. Let's just use Massachusetts. If I'm a multi-store single state operator in Massachusetts, yeah, I'm absolutely hiring a marketing manager. I'd love to find one that has some of the compliance and regulatory experience because, just a couple of weeks ago, Massachusetts declared war on the word special. They declared war on the word deal. And guess what? Our websites are covered with the word special and the word deal. So we obviously could go and solve that pretty quickly ourselves, but just taking the word deal and special off really isn't a solution. You need to brainstorm a new word to replace those words with and figure out a way for your customers to still find you when they type in the word deal. So I'll give you an example of how we did this in the automotive space. So Nissan used to be one of the hardest manufacturers to have a car dealership with. They had so much compliance testing. Their brand guideline book was at least the size of a phone book. If your audience can remember those old days where people used to have phone books, it was crazy. And they one time said to me, "You're using the word Nissan deals. You cannot use the word Nissan deals." And we're looking at our search console and our analytics and seeing, holy smokes. There's a lot of traffic coming from that particular term. So how do we address it? Quirk Nissan deals with customers with the utmost of respect. Whenever Nissan deals with a customer, we just need to get creative. So you need someone who's able to read the compliance and regulatory documentation and understand it, knows how to digital market, but is dead set on finding that gray area where you can still do the things you're trying to do without getting slapped around by any regulator or compliance auditor.
How did Massachusetts just declare war on the words special and deal?
Well, they sent out an email from the CCC basically saying that you can no longer use the word deal or special, which I think is them just trying to make it really hard. They're trying to fight an invisible war against a customer that doesn't really, they think that they're trying to protect children. I think by saying kids are attracted to deals, everyone's attracted to deals, and no one wants to overpay for anything. But they basically had some new language come out that they're now saying that they're going to actually enforce this time that would really curtail the ability for a dispensary to A, create a special or deal, and then B, market it. So they just dream up new ways to make it harder to do business successfully in Massachusetts every single day, and not just in cannabis.
Do you find that a lot of cannabis websites are optimized for mobile devices?
It's kind of a loaded question, to be honest with you. I mean, yes, they all appear and look nice on mobile. That's not to say that they're actually mobile optimized. I mean, you can have a website that's responsive that appears about the same on all different device sizes. Now, whether or not that experience is actually optimized, TBD. To actually be mobile optimized, it's a matter of moving where the calls to action are to familiar areas, having toolbars and taskbars in certain areas that make the shopping experience really easy to understand and familiar. I think that most of them are responsive and mobile design, but they still lack optimizations like the ones I've just mentioned.
So if you're to design it, for mobile optimization, is it something that where if somebody searches dispensary near me and they get your site, the first thing they get up is, your hottest special or deal?
That's exactly right. I do it. If you want to know how I think about how any landing page on a dispensary should look like, go look at what Target has on their homepage right now. They're focusing on seasonality. Right now, it's back to, I don't have to even go to Target. I already know they're talking about back to school, back to college. There's JanSport backpacks, there's pencils, there's rulers, there's MacBook computers. I mean, following the seasonality. Now, cannabis doesn't have as much seasonality as a traditional retailer like Target or Walmart would have, but they do have seasonality. Around Halloween, let's talk about edible chocolates. I mean, that's so darn obvious. 420, let's talk about every deal under the sun. 710, let's talk about oil and concentrates. Green Wednesday, it's another 420 as far as I'm concerned. In fact, I think that Green Wednesday will eventually surpass 420 in terms of online sales, but we're probably a few years off from that. There are expiration dates in traditional retail. So you're not going to see them advertising a lot of beach chairs or beach umbrellas in December. You'll probably start to see them doing that around April when people are starting to think, oh goodness, here comes the summer. I'm excited. But there are expiration dates on our products as cannabis retailers. They're plants and they do expire. So prioritizing product that may be close to its maturity rate makes a lot of sense to me. Showing flour and chocolate bundles around Valentine's Day makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, put your thinking cap on, be creative. There's a lot of seasonality in cannabis just waiting to be marketed.
Well, and it's also an industry that is filled with these like hyper trends that are come about via Instagram or wherever they're found.
Yep.
And you kind of got to strike while the iron's hot because they seem to fade just as quick as they come on sometimes.
I 100% agree with you. It's a very trendy, very clicky type of industry.
So why do you think Green Wednesday will eventually surpass 420?
Yeah, because I think 420 has kind of begun to become a little bit clicky. Listen, I'm not saying that 420 is not important and not cool and not great. It's hard to be very celebratory about a holiday that very few people actually know why it's a holiday. I mean, I've read some of the rumors and some of the myths behind it. Some people say it was the time that a bunch of college students went and got together. I don't really know what the story is, but it's not one that really inspires a lot of emotion for me. I think that Green Wednesday is an emotional holiday because the college kids are coming back from college. They're, seeing all their friends for the first time in a long time. And now, great, they can buy legal cannabis. So I think that's a far more interesting holiday than 420 just because it has a backstory. Plus, also it's Thanksgiving, and everyone loves to get high with their cousins before eating turkey and stuffing and cranberry sauce. Maybe it's just me, but I think a lot of people love doing that.
We talked about issues with scale previously, or not scale necessarily, but you talked about how there's this mentality at dispensaries, this if we build it, they will come mentality. So, but what sort of mentality should you have when it comes to e-commerce? Should you scale in advance hoping for e-commerce success, or should you build e-commerce, make sure that it's working, and then perhaps wind up disappointing consumers because you need to scale to meet that e-commerce demand?
I believe in being risk adverse. I think especially in a regulated industry like this one. Listen, I think it's a lot easier. It goes back to our conversation about being a single state operator with multiple stores or a multi-state operator with the same number of stores. I'm going to pick single state every single time in that argument because it's just easier to understand. I think that managing fewer brands is easier than managing more brands. I think that managing fewer SKUs gives you a little bit better idea of which SKUs are performing best so you can make more informed purchase decisions after that. I always believe in starting a little bit smaller and expanding than starting off too big and then fire sailing off yourself to survive. I think that people would really need to spend a lot more time looking at the retail data, the neighborhood demographic data, the profitability data, the household income data before they make a lot of the decisions that they just seem to, I'll do that. It just seems like a lot of things are made of circumstantial evidence, if any evidence in this industry. I'm always going to lean back hard on the data. I think better data and better analysis of that data will lead to better retail zoning opportunities. I think it will lead to buying better inventory. I think it will lead to better marketing decisions. I mean, there's how do I put this? There's a couple companies out there that advertise brands on dispensary menus. And one of the things I keep hearing is we're advertising there because they have that product in stock. They have that product in stock because that product is not selling, was what we actually found out. I mean, often, there's stuff that goes in and out of inventory. We know that's selling hot. I would always be looking for stuff that sells kind of hot or is unique versus just status quo. Not to get long-winded on this, but everyone I talk to, or many of the people I talk to, say to me, we want to be the Apple Store of cannabis, or we want to be the Starbucks of cannabis. In reality, David, most dispensaries are not those things, because Starbucks and Apple pretty much uniquely only sell their own products. They're completely vertically integrated from that perspective. Most dispensaries are more like CVS or Walgreens. CVS and Walgreens are very similar businesses. They're both pharmacies that have some type of retail apparatus. They both have messy aisles. They both have people with red vests with white plastic name tags that sell Crest toothpaste at $9.99. How do you win that customer when it's basically the exact same store experience? That's what I would encourage dispensary operators to think a lot about before building anything. How do I win customers with the exact same criteria as the guy across the street?
So how do they win those customers?
Convenience, better experience, better treatment, better advice. I mean, obviously you have to be better, but how do you convey that? You do that through convenience, I think. If I've got a Starbucks here and a Dunkin' Donuts there, obviously if I want a little bit more expensive coffee, I'm going to go to Starbucks. But when it's the same exact product, maybe try experimenting with different brands than your competitor has instead of the exact same ones. I mean, I can get Cresco anywhere. There's certain products I can only get in certain places, and that's what I would really focus on, is being unique. I mean, I look at the concentrate markets, and gosh, that is such a ripe for disruption industry. The concentrates market has the least photographed product SKUs out there. It's all that same yellow jar of goo in every single menu. Imagine if that yellow jar of goo was a green jar of goo. That would stand on everyone's concentrate menus. It's knowing where to be different and how to be different, with a focus and emphasis on convenience.
You mentioned the AI budtender. Is that something you see as a plugin or a tool as part of the e-commerce platform, or is that something that you could have, available in the store as well?
Our intention is to put it exclusively on Rank Really High websites, but we do have a kiosk mode, and everything that Rank Really High is investing in right now is designed to optimize their out-store experience and their in-store experience. So advertising will be available on both platforms. AI bud tending will be available on both platforms. But the AI bud tender in the actual dispensary itself, listen, I don't think any level of AI at this point in time can outperform a person who can actually make eye contact with you. So if you train your bud tenders in store well, they're going to be a better solution than an AI bud tender, I think, at least right now. Over time, that will change because the data will just be so immense, it'll be hard to compete with it.
You made a lot of news this week with a recent integration. So tell us what's going on.
Yeah, so we partnered with a company called Moody Day that does one of the most disruptive things I've seen with regards to brand reviews and video content and bud tender content. Basically, the entrepreneur Bjorn reached out to me and said, hey, I've got this really great idea. We're going to have people actually do video reviews of them trying certain products. And what I'd like to do with you, Dan, is put those reviews on that actual product's landing page on your website. Absolute no-brainer. It taps into all the major trends right now, the TikTok videos, the dancing on that's everyone loves to film themselves trying things, product unboxing, it's all of that. It's transcribed with AI. It's embedded on the website. It has a review score with star ratings. I mean, we're all trying to figure out how to find the kind of curious and convince them to come in and buy our product. Seeing a person that they can relate to, actually trying the product and giving a review of not necessarily trying the product, but reviewing their experience with the product. I can think of no better advocate for a brand than this product to help them push forward their products into a customer hands.
What's better at selling a product, the product description or a review?
Oof. Wow. It's hard to pick I mean, I'm going to pick the review. I'm going to pick the review because if you get the right review, the reviewer will tell you how they felt about it, what they felt was a reasonable price that they paid for it. They'll show you content about it. I mean, with regards to Moody Day versus a run-of-the-mill written description, I'm going to go Moody Day. I'm going to go review all day long. I'm going to go review all day long regardless, but video review, that's not even a fair comparison.
So given the current state of e-commerce in cannabis, what kind of grade would you give it? And where do you foresee it, let's say 5 years from now?
What kind of rate would I give it?
Grade. Like, I mean, if you had to grade the current state of e-commerce.
The current state of e-commerce, if I was to give it a grade, and I'm including myself in this evaluate, C-. We got a long way to go. We got a lot of companies investing more time and technology into making an iframe more searchable instead of making their other supporting products more successful for their customers. I think that, yeah, e-commerce gets a strong C-, maybe even a D+ from me.
How long until e-commerce comes to a point where you'd be happy or satisfied with it?
I'll never be satisfied with it. It'll be commoditized within the next 2 years, maybe sooner. I think that short of the days of Rank Really High being the only company that doing what we're doing at scale, I think there's going to be a lot more companies doing it, and we enjoy that. We like competition. Competition makes us all on it, keeps us all honest. But I do think the days of, hey, they built my website and hey, they built my menu are going to be quickly going away. And it's for the better. I mean, it really should be an interconnected experience. Every other industry uses Shopify or WooCommerce. Something like that is what this industry needs and what we're seeking to build.
We've primarily focused on B2C commerce. Is there an e-commerce play in the B2B marketplace?
Yeah, we actually explore that a little bit. We think, again, back to the example of Target. Target does so well selling Crest toothpaste and Snuggle fabric softener on their store retail shelves, and they do just as well on their e-commerce shelves that Snuggle and Crest constantly call them and say, how do we get more value out of you? And Target actually came up with this idea. Let's actually create a marketing company called Roundel and sell them the opportunity to extend their reach into our customer audience. I think that's really how a lot of that could be done today, allowing a brand like, let's call it Wild or Wana, to buy advertising, to buy premier positioning on your website. That should be such an easy conversation to have. Brands do not have great direct-to-consumer models. Most consumers are not looking for a delivery van to show up at their house and give them a formerly illicit product. And even when they do, there's not enough variety in what we're offering from a single brand. So the way I look at it is brands have been often held hostage by dispensaries that, again, typically don't have a marketing director, don't have any data, don't know how to read that data, and don't have an effective website. Brands are itching for a way to get off the bench and get into the game, and we're trying to do that with our website partners and dispensaries. I think that a lot of dispensaries have a wholesale manager or an inventory manager who goes out and makes purchases, but they're not and they have great relationships with their brands, but are they offering them that extra level of service, which is, I can include a promotion for you in my newsletter. I can have you guys not only come in and do the pop-up, which I can talk all day about pop-ups and what my concerns are there, but if you're going to do a pop-up, why not add some value to it by doing a social media post, doing an email newsletter, doing some, market yourself. Dispensaries are not just there to sell product. They're also there to help you promote it. And I think as soon as that brands realize that, there's a lot of really interesting conversations and opportunities that will come into the fold.
Well, Dan, I really do appreciate you taking the time today, especially because we haven't really covered the, digital marketing SEO side of the business a lot. But before we get out of here, is there anything else that you want to make sure the Cannabis Equipment News audience either knows about yourself or Rank Really High?
Yeah, I just want to make a general statement about the industry, if that's okay. I think we like to tell ourselves that we're an industry of inclusion, that we're equitable, that we want to be partners with other companies. I think actions speak louder than words, and I would challenge your audience, operators, brands, to find ways to find partners that are more in line with their cultural values, because I think there's a lot of missing business ethics, business etiquette in this industry. And I'd like to be one of the advocates who says enough is enough. It's time to be professionals, everybody. We're all here to do the same thing, which is displace pharmaceutical solutions of a non-habit forming plant. That's what I would say.
Have you seen a lack of professionalism in the industry?
I've seen an astounding lack of professionalism. That's coming from someone who worked in the home services field, which is not universally well trusted or liked, as well as the car industry, which is also has some challenges. I think when I was running my first company, Dealer Teamwork, I maybe sent out 1 to 3 cease and desists over the course of 7 years of business. I've had no choice but to send out like 3 of those in the last 90 days. The level of professionalism, not saying your competitor's name, not being slanderous, it's just sad. Like, it just really isn't professional. And I'd really love to encourage this industry to be professional, be kind, because we're not just competitors, we're peers as well.
Well, I think if you advocate for kindness, in both business and your personal life, I don't think you're going to get a lot of pushback there.
I think kindness trumps all. I agree with you there.
Well, Dan, thank you again for taking the time, man. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, David. Really, really appreciate you having me on today.
All right. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to that daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. For Dan Mondello, co-founder and CEO of Rank Really High, just a struggle bus today. I'm David Manti. This is the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast, and we will see you next week.
Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.